Hello and welcome to the Knowledge, our live Facebook Q&As. I'm Tom from the communications team and thank you for joining me today. We have a wide variety of knowledge from Keele spanning a vast amount of areas, and we thought we'd get our academics live on Facebook to answer some of your questions. And today I'm joined by Dr. Jonathan Parker. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello.
How are we?
Good, good. Enjoying the sunshine and lockdown. I'm on the sunny Keele campus, by the way. So yeah, I'm actually not too far from work.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, so you're a campus resident then?
Yes, yes.
So you get to enjoy walks around the campus and around the lakes.
Yep, yep.
Fantastic. Now, this live stream, we asked you about this just over a week ago, I think it was, sort of proposed the idea to you. And in that space of time, there's been so much that's happened in sort of the US and in politics in particular. So yeah, do you want to give us a quick background as to what your area of expertise is and what it is that you do at Keele?
Yeah, I mean, I teach American politics at Keele. My background is particularly around the courts. So I teach on the Supreme Court, and I teach a course on race and justice at the postgraduate level. So this is what I've been studying and teaching for my entire career. So yeah, over 20 years.
Fantastic, and we're going to sort of go through a few areas. I think first of all, so let's look at COVID-19. So is it fair to say that President Trump's response to the pandemic has varied quite a bit over the past few months? And can you talk to us about how this has evolved since the start of the pandemic?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would argue he's been pretty consistent. He hasn't cared about anything except the economy from the get-go. And so, yeah, again, you have to remember Trump is worried about re-election, and that's absolutely uppermost in his mind all the way through this. And so that dictated quite a bit of his reaction to COVID as it came out. So he was very relaxed at first when it came out. No, there's no threats, just relax. The Chinese are doing a great job. There are no cases here, no deaths here. And then as they begin to tick up, to be fair, he jumped quickly and he did a travel ban before most Western countries did. But then again, there was absolutely no coordination, no sense of urgency. Again, very similar to the British government, he completely goofed up the attempt to gather PPE for hospitals. The ventilator issue wasn't addressed until it was too late, and then it turned out to be not such a big deal. And again, it's just been a series of missteps all along the way and missed opportunities that he's pretty much mismanaged it from the get-go.
And so you think his main motivation was the economy then? It wasn't really what's best for the pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it still is. I mean, yeah, he's pushing states to reopen when they've got high infection rates, which is, the epidemiologist would tell us is nuts. But again, he wants the economy to get going. He's absolutely riveted on the notion of the economy moving again before fall, because that's when he has to go to the polls.
And so how has this been perceived by the public and the wider government in the US?
Well, again, it depends on who you look at. His base has stayed loyal. I mean, Trump has always had a good 35% of the public who voted for him and who love him, no matter what happened. As Trump said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and these people would still support me. And his response to COVID-19 has been the same. Most of the country is pretty united around a low opinion of how he's doing. He doesn't have a very good opinion poll rating for his COVID response. But again, he's got 35%. His base think he did a great job. Everything else think he was disastrous. But in terms of the wider public, it's more interesting to look at what people think of their local governors. Again, Trump is not in charge well, he could have been in charge if he decided to take charge, and he could have led the national fight against this, but he decided not to. And he's left it devolve to each state. So each state governor is the person who's in charge. And so what's happened is, if you look at public opinion polls, the public are giving 65, 70% approval rating for their governors, who are the people who are in charge of this. And they're giving 35% approval ratings to Trump. So again, his lack of leadership is pretty telling in this. So yeah, my home state of North Carolina is a fairly purple state. It's controlled by the Republicans, but there's a Democratic governor. And he had very low approval ratings before COVID-19, and his approval ratings are now in the absolute stratosphere. He's got 2/3 approval, which is very handy running into re-election.
And so he's also been very outspoken about the unrest that's arisen from the tragic death of George Floyd. What impact do you think that the things that he says has, and how does this impact on his approval ratings?
Well, in terms of his approval ratings, I don't think it'll have any effect whatsoever. Again, his base are not terribly sympathetic to civil rights. He ran as a law and order president. You could see him continuing with that. His instincts are law and order. Attack the rioters, be heavy-handed, bring in the police. Even when he tries to be sympathetic, it just comes off as so badly. It backfires on him. So, for example, he gave a condolence call to the family, which is, it's what presidents do. It's an easy win. You look like you care. It's not something that is hard to fake. But even Trump, again, he wouldn't stop talking. He wouldn't let the families get a word in, and so that backfired on him. He decided he wanted a nice press shot in front of one of the burned churches yesterday. Inconveniently, there were protesters there, and so he sent the National Guard in with tear gas and rubber bullets, even though the protesters weren't doing anything. But they were screwing up his PR shot. So he sent those in heavy-handed and then the bishop of the church was furious afterwards and said, we weren't asked about that. So again, every time he does something and tries to look sympathetic, it backfires. And so again, he keeps reaching back for that sort of heavy-handed, sort of violent approach to it. The quote on when there's looting, they'll be shooting. Again, that's quoting a segregationist from decades ago. That's not a good idea, but it's the kind of symbol he likes.
But I mean, we can see the behind the scenes of these, especially the church photo. We can see the setup to this. It's been reported on. Does that not affect him? Where we can see how almost blatant he's been with how he goes about these stunts, for want of a better word.
Well, again, this is his entire. Trump's presidency is not hard to analyze in that sense. He's very consistently inconsistent. So he makes up stuff all the time. I mean, you could just track the Washington Post. He's tracking at something like 30,000 lies now through his presidency. He lies consistently every day, 10 or 15 times. He just makes stuff up as he talks, and we're used to that now. And again, his base don't care. They think we're all just taking things too seriously, and it's a plot by the left-wing media, and everyone else is kind of horrified. And again, the polarization in the country means doing this kind of thing isn't going to hurt him with his base. It doesn't mean he's going to win the election, but it means that his base don't care. Now the question is, what does everyone else in the middle think? And that's going to be the key battleground.
And so from fact-checking to hidden tweets, President Trump is currently embroiled in a row with Twitter, and he signed an executive order aimed at removing some of the legal protections given to social media platforms. Why has Trump responded in this way to a platform that he embraces so much?
Right. Well, this is just a great opportunity to start a fight. Again, to rev his base up. This is what he does, and so again, he'll manufacture some sort of conflict that isn't really there, and he loves Twitter. I mean, this is his main means of communication. I mean, to be fair to him, he campaigned on Twitter. He won the presidency mainly through tweeting stuff. He spent a lot less than Hillary Clinton on his campaign. He certainly won the Republican nomination, spending extremely little. So as much as you might say, politicians buy their victories in American politics, Trump didn't. He just used Twitter. He's an absolute master at it. So again, for this case, Twitter fact-checked him, and so again, they seized his tweet and they hid it behind a big blue window, and it said, this does not meet Twitter's regulations for accountability, and you have to click on it to actually see it. So again, it hides it. So he's turned this into a plot by the media that trying to undermine his presidency, even though all the other social media companies are falling all over themselves to say, no, we're not going to do this. It's fine. You can say what you want.
And so what does an executive order actually do? What does that mean for Trump?
Well, an executive order this was just meaning, the law basically declares that social media companies are simply common carriers. They're simply the vehicle by which people are spreading their messages. So they're not the editorial, they don't editorially own the messages that are going out. Think of them as a big bulletin board. So if someone tweets out something that's libelous, that means that Facebook is not legally responsible for that. Yeah, you can sue the guy who posted it, but you can't sue Facebook. So what Trump's trying to do is he's trying to unpick that. So the executive order just says the Justice Department is going to interpret this legislation to mean that social media companies are responsible for the content of what they're dealing with. And that means if they show any kind of bias or if they show any kind of action that could be interpreted as being one-sided, then again, they could be prosecuted by the federal authorities. That is not what the legislation says. The legislation is pretty clear about this. But this is why groups like Facebook were trying so hard to back off that and trying not to pick a fight with Trump. They don't want to be regulated. So again, he's just picking this little fight with Twitter. Twitter is the one group that's probably the least favorable to Trump, although ironically, it's his most important platform. Yeah, so this just revs his base up.
And so, when he signs an executive order, he seems to sign a lot of them, and he seems to get a lot of press around the executive orders that he signs.
Yeah.
Is there a purpose to that? Have we seen other presidents use executive orders in the same way, or is Trump different in the way that he's using executive orders?
Well, this is something that has been occurring and increasing over time. Obama particularly ramped up the use of executive orders. So, I mean, Trump is continuing that pattern. So he's not doing anything new in that respect. If you think of the United States has a very strong system of separation of powers. We have the opposite of the British system, by the way. So again, the British system is the prime minister is in charge. The prime minister is the head of the majority party within parliament. So you have to have a majority to be prime minister. You have to be able to get stuff done. In the U.S., we have the opposite view, which is the last thing you want to do is have someone who can get stuff done because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the president has to face off against two different bodies of Congress. So the president is actually very powerless compared to most chief executives of countries throughout the world. So Trump has got a problem in that he can't do all the stuff he promised. And Obama had the same problem. When the Congress turns or becomes controlled by the party that's against you, then you're stuck. When the Republicans took the House and the Senate, Obama couldn't get anything done, so he began to use executive orders very, very frequently to try to get around them. So again, he's taking the existing laws and just reinterpreting them a bit. So Trump's doing the same thing. He's got a Democratic Congress now who's absolutely opposed to him. So he uses executive orders. And they're a very convenient thing because they're very symbolic. You can give a press conference and say you've done it. It doesn't actually mean you've done it. It doesn't mean it's legal. It just means that you're claiming that the national government's going to follow this rule now. Then it gets litigated in the courts, and we figure out whether he can actually do it or not.
And so the U.S. elections are due to take place later this year. Will the pandemic affect this, do you think, or do you think they'll go ahead as planned?
Well, both. I mean, yes, it's going to go ahead as planned. I mean, we had this huge crisis in 2000 with Bush versus Gore. We had an absolute tie in terms of the election, and the mess sort of got centered on Florida, where we don't really know how many votes separated them, but somewhere in the neighborhood of less than 1,000 votes would determine who's going to be president of the United States for the next 4 years. The Florida Supreme Court took over the recount, and the American Supreme Court overruled that and said, no, we have to have a president in place by January 20th. That is absolutely foundational in the Constitution. So yeah, we're going to have an election. We don't know what it's going to look like. And again, this is the difficulty in COVID. You need to have a system of trying to reduce the logjam. You need to have lots of mail ballots. You need to have lots of early voting techniques that you can use to reduce the amount of crowding you'll have on election day. The Republicans have been absolutely opposed to all that, and Trump's been very open. He's just said, "Oh yeah, if you had an open election and you had mail ballots, the Democrats would win every time," which kind of gives the game away. So the Republicans are engaged in a very systematic campaign of voter suppression at the moment, trying to stop the Democrats from relaxing regulations around mail ballots. Trump's trying to claim that they're fraudulent. They're actually the most secure form of voting that we have. There's almost no fraud in terms of mail-in ballots. There's fraud involved with other things, but occasionally, but it's very tiny. But again, he's got an interest in trying to depress the vote. If it's harder for people to get out to vote, then he's got a better shot of winning.
So we actually had a comment from Patrick saying he quoted Biden as saying, "If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you aren't black." Is that a good statement for Joe Biden to say, or will that damage his chances? Do you think? Is that good for his base, or how will that fare for Joe?
Yeah, Joe Biden, he knows he shouldn't have said that, and he walked it back afterwards, and he more or less apologized for that. And yeah, it was. I mean, he was. But this is Joe Biden. I mean, this is what he's done his entire career. He is known for gaffes. He likes to talk off the cuff. When he feels comfortable, he shoots his mouth off. It's not that different from Trump, by the way. And again, he's known for going off piste and doing this. And again, he was on a black radio program. He was trying to be pals with the with the DJ, and again, he went too far, and he shouldn't have said that. That was a really that's a pretty egregious thing to say, and he knew that afterwards. He walked it back. But will it hurt him? No, of course not. I mean, this will upset a few Democratic activists, but again, when they come down to thinking whether they're going to support him or Trump, particularly given Trump's reaction to the events following the death of George Floyd, I can't imagine that Biden's going to be hurt too badly.
And so, do you think how Trump has handled the pandemic and how he's handling the current riots in America, do you think any of that will have any impact on his chances in the election, so his chances of being re-elected?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Trump had a fantastic shot at re-election before COVID-19. The economy was booming, and again, we were due for a recession, but we didn't see any signs of it coming. If he had gone into re-election with a booming economy, and he could say, "Look, you're better off now than you were 4 years ago. I promised to keep this country running, and I did." As long as nothing really bad happened, then he would be cruising to re-election. Now we've got an economy facing the worst recession we've had since the Great Depression of the 1930s. People are really worried, and they're not very happy with how he's reacted. I don't think many people in the United States think Trump's done a great job in terms of the COVID reaction. Again, his base they don't care. They're going to vote for him anyway. He's got 35% of the vote. But he's got to win near 50% of the vote to win. So, yeah, it is going to hurt him. If people feel the economy is tanked and that Trump's partly responsible, and they usually do hold the president responsible, then he's going to really lose a lot of votes. He's beginning to lose support amongst old people, which tend to be a very reliable. It's not a big part of his base, but they're a group that do like to vote Republican. And so again, places like Florida, the older population are really in favor of keeping lockdown going. And so Trump being a little cavalier with reopening the economy and basically saying, yeah, okay, some people will die, but we've got to get the economy going. That doesn't go down well with old people. So, yeah, he's beginning to lose support, and this is going to really hurt him in November.
And so, Helen has sort of made a comment around China, what the part that China will play in this election, and how the subject of China will come up. She says, "Do you think that Biden will change his tune close to the election, or will this be a he likes China more, no he likes China more sort of debate?"
Well, Trump's trying to reinvent this as some sort of scandal, and it's not really, is it? It's something he needs to get us talking about something other than his disastrous reaction to COVID-19. So again, he's by blaming China for the virus. That's one thing. It's not my fault. They manufactured this thing and they screwed it up, and it's the World Health Organization's fault for not warning us, and I didn't know. So again, it's a nice way of changing the tune. And in terms of that, he's going to try to spear Biden with everything under the sun. But he'll try to say he's in hock to Chinese interests or things like that. Again, there's a huge debate over how the U.S. should be reacting to China as a rising global superpower. The U.S. could just simply collapse and give away leadership to China within Asia if it wants to. Or it can try to manage this rise of China and try to compete. One of Obama's big efforts was focusing on Asia. Again, this worried Europe at the time because the U.S. basically said Asia is the future. Our strategic interests are there. We need to stop focusing on Europe so much. And again, Biden was part of that administration. So I would see Biden as potentially a much more effective foe of China in the long run. But yeah, again, it's difficult to put it in the terms that they'll use. Trump's going to try to turn this into a mudslinging fight, and so it's not going to be this academic discussion of superpower relations and deterrence and things like that. It's gonna be, oh, you're in hock to China and you don't care about this and you don't let the virus go. And it's gonna be playground fighting, I'm afraid. But yeah, that tends to be how it goes. Again, there's a huge debate about this, but it's extremely complicated, and it's difficult to do, and it's again in a very, very fraught environment. When we're in the midst of this pandemic, China's cracking down on Hong Kong. We've got real questions about what to do about that. The U.S. has withdrawn from any kind of free trade agreements in Asia. None of these are really popular things to talk about with voters. So, again, I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but it's not going to be in a very thoughtful way, I suspect.
And how do you think, sort of, when we see a US election process, we always think of the rallies and the big gatherings and those big sort of statement rallies where people get together and support their candidate. I'm guessing we won't really see much of that during this election because of the pandemic. And how do you think that will harm both sides of that, both Biden and Trump?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure what's going to happen. First of all, I think the Republicans are going to go ahead with it. Trump is supposed to go to my home state, North Carolina. He's going to have the Republican National Convention in Charlotte. He has threatened to pull out of the state unless the state relaxes its regulations on social distancing. So the governor is Democratic, and so Trump's picking a fight just to have a fight. But he wants all the restaurants open. He wants to be able to bring everyone in for the Republican convention. Yeah, if they all want to get COVID, fine. They can do that. He might wipe out quite a bit of Republican activists, but there we go. The Democrats aren't going to do that. And so I think the Democratic convention will be much more online, much quieter. And this is the problem we've had with Joe Biden. And it may be a problem, it may not be. He's been very quiet because he's not president. He can't do anything that'll get everyone's attention every single day. He's issuing press conferences and speeches and trying to do interviews online, but that's not the same as a rally. It's sort of sucking the oxygen out of this campaign for Biden. That's kind of helped him, to be honest. Trump keeps putting his foot in his mouth, and again, as long as Trump keeps doing things like this, why try to stop him? Why try to change the tune and change the issues? So again, it hasn't hurt Biden yet, but it might be an issue coming up towards the election. But again, when we get into the final moments and we get into debates and things like that, I think those will focus people's minds. But it is harming Biden's attempts to try to get known at the moment.
Yeah, because I guess his activity online doesn't have maybe the press coverage or the media coverage that a rally would in the same way.
No. And again, the problem of the incumbent has a huge advantage when you're running for president. Anyone will invite you. You can say, would you like the president to come visit you? And then all the press will follow. They'll take pictures. It'll be on the news. Yeah, so everything Trump does every single day is covered by the news. If Biden does something, he gives a speech, who cares? It's difficult for Biden to get any kind of excitement from the news, to get any kind of coverage. So again, he's kind of a stealth candidate at the moment. That's kind of helping him, to be honest. It's Trump. If Trump keeps doing inflammatory things, then why stop him? But as we get closer to the election, Biden needs to give people a sense of who he is. He needs people to have some notion of what he'd be like as president. He needs to sort of calm people's fears that he's, again, Trump's going around calling him mentally deficient and saying he's Sleepy Joe. He's got early stage dementia. He's not with it. Biden has to show people that he's okay. And again, it's difficult to do that. If you had rallies, it'd be a great way of doing it. You've got a sympathetic audience. You got all these cheering people. It makes you look good. But again, on the internet, it doesn't work. Doing a Zoom call is just not exciting.
Well, Dr. Jonathan Barker, thank you very much for that. It's fascinating. It's a really interesting topic that just seems to change day by day, really, and new things come into the sphere of it. So thank you very much for everyone for watching. Thank you to Dr. Jonathan, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.